Hi, I'm Bob Ethington.
And I'm Nick Nicholas.
And this is From Akron and Beyond. Hello there, folks, and welcome to this week's episode. And we're very excited. We've had this guy in our sights as a guest for quite a while. For frankly, since the beginning of the show when we were first planning people we would like to have on. And that gentleman is Howard Parr, the executive director of the Akron Civic Theatre. I think that everyone that has ever been to the Civic knows it's a true gem of our area, and such a beautiful theater, and the fact that it still is running and putting on fantastic shows and is just looking better than ever is a real tribute to the people who have, volunteered to work there, the employees there, the people who have donated money over the years, and definitely Mr. Howard Parr.
The hard work of all the staff.
As the director, right? He's been in charge of this. So anyway, my buddy here, Nick Nicholas, was actually on the board of the Akron Civic Theatre for a while. And so, Nick, here's your big chance. I thought I'd give you a first question.
I think so. Howard, it's so great having you here, man.
Nick, it's great to be here. It's I feel honored, honestly, to be doing this with you guys, two luminaries of the Akron music scene. I mean, I really, it's an honor to be here with you.
Oh, thank you.
That's the show for today.
Can't get any better than that.
Go on a high note.
Yeah. On my notes, my research, I saw that the Civic opened in April 1929 as the Lowe's Theater. I remember as a little kid, I think I even saw Hercules Unchained there. My dad took me, and all these years, it's still there. And like Bob said earlier, man, it's as beautiful as it was then. I mean, you guys, the board and the staff and the people that have contributed to the Civic, what a jewel, Howard, when did you start there?
In 1998 is when I started with the theater. I had previously worked for Ohio Ballet here in Akron for a couple of years, and then came over to the Civic at a time when the University of Akron was managing the theater. And I was not an employee of the University of Akron, but I was an employee of the Community Hall Foundation, the Civic Theater's board.
You left for a while, then you came back, right?
Yeah. Left for a couple of years, and then the university and the Civic sort of changed management a little bit, and I came back. And I'm going to say I left in maybe 2003 and came back in 2005.
Okay. Well, being on a board the 9 years I was there, I've seen so many changes, and they're all for the good. I mean, it looks brand new. I mean, the restoration of the grand lobby alone was it's amazing, huh?
Unbelievable, and we call that our 20-year overnight success story because we started that renovation in 2000 and completed it in 2002. The first phase, which was about 2/3, the facade of the grand lobby, and then the entire theater, and that's when we blew out the back of the stage house and made that all redone, and we added the restrooms and the lobby on the north side of the building. We did all that and finished that in 2002, but then we ran out of money, and it took us until really the pandemic when we had kicked off a capital campaign, and we're very, very fortunate to have raised most of the money we needed before the pandemic hit, and so we were able to complete the grand lobby work and the entry arcade. In addition to the building of the night stage, that all happened really during the pandemic.
I remember when the Civic was on hard times back in when I was still going to college, 1969 to 74, and I remember going with some friends to see a circus. It was on stage. I mean, elephants on the stage of the Civic, and I remember during intermission, the people that were like the tightrope walkers and the jugglers were selling popcorn going down the aisles.
Up and down the aisles,
yeah.
sure.
But I remember taking a behind-the-scenes tour with you one day, and down the basement, you showed me where the steel beams were put in there to reinforce the weight of the elephants. Huh?
Yeah, and they had that's one of my favorite parts of the tour is to show folks that, and we don't use them anymore, but we call it the trap room because there are trap doors in the stage there from back in the vaudeville days when they used it for magic and those type of things. And not only did they have elephants on stage, and I wasn't there during that time, but they also ran a cable from the balcony to the stage, and without any kind of safeties or anything, a person would ride a motorcycle from the balcony onto the stage above the audience.
It's great.
So it's crazy times. And you say that was, you think, late 60s or
from I think the latest was 74, 75.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Early 70s, because like I took some notes here. Some of the great shows I saw. I think 68 or 69, I saw Eric Burden and the Animals, and then I saw Pink Floyd September 17, 2007, when they did Dark Side of the Moon, but it hadn't been released yet, and the title of it was Eclipse.
Wow.
A Piece for Assorted Lunatics.
Wait a minute. What year did you say that was?
Wait a minute. No, I'm sorry.
Because it could
1972.
Yeah, that sounds
I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, 1972.
Nick, you're going to get us in trouble here.
No, the reason I brought some of this stuff up was in the Civic had some hard times, but then in September 17th of 2007, there was a great concert. Chrissy Hine was there, and with Jerry Lee Lewis and a lot of the Akron bands. And is it true she donated? Well, all of us, the bands that were there, Bizarros, Tin Huey, we donated our services, but she did too, right?
Yeah, no, she absolutely did, as did Jerry Lee Lewis. I mean, they were all, we obviously paid for whatever production expenses were necessary, but stagehands, that kind of thing. But no, all the talent came in, and that was at the time. Chrissy was friends with a guy named Steve Bing. Do you remember that name at all?
No.
So Steve Bing was a producer, a movie producer. He had actually, I think his family had made a ton of money in real estate. And he inherited it, like his dad died when he was maybe 25 or something. I mean, I might be getting this slightly wrong, but he inherited a pile of money at a young age, and he wanted to be a music producer and a movie producer. So he was producing things, and tragically ended up committed suicide. But Chrissy was, I think, doing an album with him, and he was producing her album, and she said, the Civic needs some help, and we'd like to go do that and talk to him about it. And he said, to her, at least the way I heard it, was that, hey, why don't we bring? He was working with Jerry Lee Lewis also, so why don't we bring Jerry Lee? And then he had a private 737, and he flew to wherever Jerry Lee was and picked him up in his band, and flew and grabbed up Chrissy, and they flew in to Akron Canton Airport. They came in and did the show, and then they left. So that was an amazing day for us,
and that
for
was
everybody.
sort of like the beginning of the turnaround because the funds that were raised from that.
Yeah. I mean, certainly that was a turning point in 2007. Yeah, I mean, that would definitely have been at the beginning of our kind of new model of how to use the building and how to activate it. And then later, and maybe you're going to get to this, but we had the opportunity with the folks from Devo wanting to do a show in support of Barack Obama's campaign. So a few years later, we ended up with that show that was Devo and Chrissy and the Black Keys, among others. Yeah. And that was also a big point. So, really two major turning points for the theater's history are attributable to artists who are from Akron and came back and did something for us.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Not to get off track too much here, but you mentioned that you had worked with the Ohio Ballet.
Yes.
So did that overlap with Heinz Paul's years there? Okay.
Yeah. No, Heinz was.
He was quite a legend.
He absolutely was. He was a great guy, and professionally, he and I were saw things in completely different ways, but we still made a lot of progress together. Personally, I just loved him. I mean, I went and with Jane Startzman, who you may know. Jane and I spent a week on his farm in upstate New Jersey area, Princeton area, doing like strategic work, and it was just an amazing experience. He was an incredible man.
Yeah. I was just when you mentioned the ballet, because he's one of those guys that sort of single-handedly started that in a way, founded. I mean, with a lot of help and a lot of people that worked with him, but it was his vision, right?
Yeah, it was definitely his vision. There were some people. Nan Klinger and Francia Albrecht and some others that really believed in it, and they secured the funding that made it all happen. But yes, it was absolutely Heinz's vision, and for a long time, we talk about the music, aspects of Akron, the music legacy of Akron, but Ohio Ballet was, when it existed. It was our version of the Cleveland Orchestra. It was what the world knew Akron for, in addition to the Devos and the Chrissies and the other folks. So,
exactly. Yeah.
Well, tell us some of the fun shows that you've experienced in the last 25 years.
Yeah. Well, I have to say the two that we just talked about were probably on the top of my list of shows. When Devo came out on stage, I was in college in the 80s, and what I knew of Devo was what I saw on MTV, and in my mind, and especially in my probably somewhat limited mind. I thought of Devo as sort of a BS techno pop band, and I really didn't think they were that great. But they walked out on stage, and from the first 30 seconds of their set, I literally sat there in awe and thought to myself, this is one of the greatest rock and roll bands I've ever heard in my life. And it just the perception of what you saw what you consumed in Macomb, Illinois, this little farm town in the middle of Illinois, and that was all the information you had was what on MTV, and you didn't listen to any of the albums or anything else,
right?
And then to see that, and I just was in awe. So that was certainly a highlight of the shows that I've had the opportunity to be a part of. The Mellencamp for sure, another really high end kind of experience. A little bit of somewhat strange for me. Think widespread panic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I would not have expected, and I've seen that.
There's some photos of Todd Rundgren
there. Todd. I mean, some of the Todd stuff is incredible. I mean, just the adoration of his fans, and Indigo Girls, same thing. Really? I mean, where people are, sitting around talking about, could you tell that in the fourth verse, she used this intonation instead of the normal one, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, those are the experiences. It's over the years, it's probably changed a little bit, but I would say, my favorite shows are any show that there's a full house for. I'm not really very discriminatory relative to what the music is or what the show is. We've had sold out houses for Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and I've been just as happy as when Bob Dylan was on stage.
The Dylan one was a great show.
A few weeks ago. Nick and I went to that, of course, and that was a great show. Well, as you've been speaking about this, I've been thinking about really a lot. Probably the majority of the best musical concerts I've gone to, definitely in Akron, have been at the Civic.
Yeah, me too.
And one thing I've always liked about the Civic, along with the whole ambience of the place,
the stars, the clouds,
yes. But is the generally the sound is very strong there. You have a good, every venue has its good, it's not so hot nights or whatever. But, a lot of the shows that I've seen that I really enjoyed, the sound was impeccable. And Dylan, I thought it was good.
Mm-hmm. And good seats for that.
And yes, we did. And Wilco, when Wilco played, that was a great show. And I love that band.
Yeah.
And it was such a fantastic show.
The show I wish I would have been to, but it was possible to get tickets years ago, was Tom Waits.
Oh yeah,
I was there.
That was
there.
right before I came back. Like I was gone, and then that show happened, and I came back like within a month afterwards, and it was that show was crazy.
Well, my anecdote about that show, because he never played concerts, it was amazing that somehow he's at the Civic.
Yeah. Even Jim Jarmusch came for that.
Yeah, and well, they made movies together.
Yeah, but he was.
So I had tickets for that show, and then at some point late that afternoon, the word was out that he was going to play a second show in Cleveland.
Okay.
So anyway, word came out that Tom was going to play a second show at the House of Blues in Cleveland that was going to begin at 2 a.m. And all these people were buying tickets and going up from Akron because that was literally when it was announced so late that a lot of people wouldn't even know about it. So I knew about it, and I thought, well, this show here at the Civic has been so great. He played like 30 songs. It's going to be this. I'm not going to go and be up all night to watch this. Ideally, I would, but no, I'm not going to do that. And then the next day, I find out that he goes to House of Blues and he plays 30 more songs, and there was only one song that he did twice. It was an entirely different set, which is incredible. So, but that show at the Civic was so good. Yeah, that was a really lucky thing to have happened there.
Howard, you and the Civic's roles changed in the last few years. Now you do booking for how many other venues?
Yeah, so I mean, we're fortunate to sort of have consolidated Akron, which is a very, I think it's important that we don't have competing venues in a market our size. So we book the Civic, obviously. We book the Goodyear Theater, which is a 1,400 capacity room. We've had that now for this is our third year. We sort of advise on the booking, not completely, but we advise on the booking at E.J. Thomas. Typically, the shows that we're involved with at EJ are the national promoters, the Live Nations, and some of those kind of folks, AEG. And then we also have a contract with the city of Akron to book Lock 3. So we do the Friday night shows and now increasingly Saturday night events as well. And of course, we've got a $12-13 million renovation to Lock 3. It's going to be stunning. That summer 2025 will roll out with a permanent performance pavilion. So, it's good to have all those venues sort of working together. Because what happens is that, I'm talking to an agent or a promoter and, they're wanting a particular date, and I don't have that date at the Civic, but I do have it available at, depending on what their, the capacity they need is, I have it available at Goodyear or I have it available at EJ. And then, of course, having the night stage has offered us the opportunity to just, we do 40 or 50 local artists a year that we wouldn't have otherwise done. Because the stage, it's 200 seats and it's set up with an in-house sound and lighting system. So, it's been very good to have all that kind of consolidated. From a marketing standpoint, about a year ago, we launched what's called Live Akron, and its job is really to consolidate all that from a marketing standpoint. So we had the booking under control, and now this comes under a marketing. And really what we're doing with that is we're promoting the city of Akron as much as we are promoting the particular events.
So, folks, this is From Akron and Beyond. I'm Bob Ethington with my co-host, Nick Nicholas. And our special guest today is Howard Parr, the executive director of the Akron Civic Theatre. And we're talking about all kinds of things related to the arts and music here in town. And I have a question for you, a slightly tricky one maybe, but as you guys are doing such development and such exciting projects going on, Akron itself is in a very weird transitional phase.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was an article in the Akron Beacon Journal a week or two ago, I'm sure everyone saw about the empty buildings, iconic buildings in Akron that are empty now. Yeah. And so I'm curious your thoughts about that. It seems like in one respect that's scary, and maybe in another respect there couldn't be a better time to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true, right? There's always opportunity and threats and opportunities, I guess. But I am by nature very optimistic. I mean, there's no question about that. I believe very much in the strength of the market here. Some 2.5 million people within a 50-mile radius of downtown Akron.
Right.
Anybody looking for any kind of sort of proof of what the market can do, in October, we had 5 sold-out comedy shows, 2 comedians, 5 shows, 3 Theo Vaughn shows at E.J. Thomas, and 2 Matt Rife shows at the Civic Theater in 8 days.
Wow.
We sold out 5, all comedy. So, all the concern of, oh my gosh. And these are age demographically, it's not like we were doing, old people comedy and young people comedy. I mean, these were the same age demo. And we sold out 5 shows. And then, that was bookended by a sold out Bob Dylan and a sold out Charlie Wilson. Yeah. So the market is incredibly robust. It's about what is the product we're offering to the market, regardless of what genre, music, theater, whatever. We've seen a really strong. We've had a great run with Playhouse Square, with Broadway in Akron, and we just went through a Mean Girls run that 5,500 people came to 2 shows. So the market is incredible. And so there's that whole thing, which isn't directly answering your question, but it's related to your question. Then the issue of downtown, I mean, we've got huge investments that have been made in downtown, the infrastructure of Main Street, $40-some million in the Bowery, that the residential aspect is doing great, 80-90% occupancy. The commercial aspect is taking a little bit more time than we'd like, but it's happening. We're getting ready to have this $12 or $13 million investment in Lock 3 that's going to change. It's going to be transformative. It's going to make Akron Central Park versus a very functional but not very attractive space, which is what Lock 3 was. And then right on the heels of that, the university and the Knight Foundation have announced the $20 million investment of the Knight Foundation, and which will be matched with another $20 million from the university's other resources for the Polsky building. So you can kind of see the flow of, the Bowery development through Knight Stage and the Civic through Lock 3, and then right behind that is going to be the Polsky building. So there's huge progress and investment that's happening. And I'm also a person that looks at this, and I hear a lot of folks that express the concern of, after the pandemic, people didn't come back to work and all that stuff. But I was here. I was here before the pandemic, and the reality is the streets, if anything, look a little busier because all those residential folks are living downtown that weren't there before. And what happened back in those days when everybody worked for those big companies is they came in, they parked in the Cascade deck, they got on an elevator, they went to their office, they did their thing, they had their lunch at their desk. Occasionally they went and grabbed something at the Orangery Mall downstairs, and then they got back in their car and they went back to the suburbs. So, yes, there's less people downtown, but were those people really changing? And I'm sure that I'm sure that some of them were. And if I was a restaurant owner downtown, I might have a different viewpoint of this. But in terms of the Civic Theater and our relationship with the market, we don't see the issues. People talking about, oh my God, there's not parking, or there's not this, or there's not that, and yet there can be a sold-out Lock 3, a sold-out Civic Theater, and a sold-out Rubber Ducks game on the same night, and everybody finds a place to park, and most of it is free. So that's kind of this is a little bit of a soapbox for me, but I feel like parking is like a red herring. When somebody says, oh, I'd love to come to your show, but there's no parking, what they're really saying is, I'm too polite to tell you I don't want to come to your show. So I want you to think of me as being cool enough to want to come to your show. So it's not that I'm not cool enough to come to your show. It's that there's no parking, right? You can tell that this has been a little bit of a hot button for me over the years.
Well, there's always been a strange thing about. I think it's one of the beauties of Akron, and it's one of the reasons why it's remains a very affordable city to live in. We keep hearing our standard of living is so high here, which is great, and I love it. That's for sure. But it's. It is funny, though, because I worked at the main library downtown for many years, and it was always difficult getting people to come to the main library. And touched upon this. You'd always hear the same things. It would be like, well, the parking, where are you supposed to park? Well, there's a huge deck right connected to the building. That would be one place you could park. And then and then the other aspect of that was I'm going to sound like I'm a terrible elitist here, but a couple of events that would always bring a lot of people right by the library would be like the wedding show or the gardening show at John S. Knight Center, which is right across the street from the main library. And you always knew when something was happening there because there were people driving the wrong way on the one-way street. And it's just like, and I was always like, it can't be that complicated. There's two one-way streets essentially. And it's, but anyway, that's another topic. But it always was a thing with the main library. I did the main event programming there, and you really had to get good people, great speakers in, and those are free programs.
Absolutely.
And we would get great attendance, but boy, you had to work at it.
And a beautiful building.
Yeah.
Beautiful building.
Yeah. So this is from Akron and Beyond. I am Bob Ethington with my co-host, Nick Nicholas. Our special guest is Howard Parr, the executive director of the Akron Civic Theatre. We've been talking about a lot of the kinds of shows that have played the theater over the years, and some of the big names. And I'm just curious, Howard, if there's any particular show that kind of stood out to you as having a certain specialness to it.
Well, certainly locally for folks in this area, we were fortunate to host Michael Stanley a number of times, but we hosted his last public performance. And
really?
Sure, it was right before the pandemic, maybe a week before we got shut down for the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then tragically he got sick and passed away before shows were able to happen again. So we did host the final performance of Michael Stanley, and talk about a cultural icon here. For people of a certain age, it was their life.
Right.
And so it was very important and I think appropriate for the Civic to have hosted that show.
Well, one thing about the Civic, and that just coming from my own personal experience, is that because I've been lucky enough to play there and perform there with bands about half a dozen times. I've played with Tracy Thomas and with Chris Butler, Harvey Gold, Tin Huey, Half Cleveland, those bands. But you're on that stage, and you can't help but think of the history of the place.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And it really is kind of awe-inspiring, to think of some of the legends of music that have played there, and to think you're in the same spot. I don't know. It's pretty amazing.
I felt the same way. The two opportunities I had to play there with my band, it's like a dream come true,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the night stage is a great room now, too, because it's a smaller capacity room that lets us showcase some of that, some of the local folks in a little bit different way. And for a while before we had the night stage, really what led to it was the success of what we were calling our cabaret shows, where we were setting up a stage on the stage. And I suspect some of the shows that you guys did were in that format.
Yeah.
And, that had 176 capacity, and we did about 30 of them a year, and the success of those is really one of the reasons that the night stage got developed, and now we're doing 125 events a year in the night stage. It is amazing. The history is amazing, and I think about to see the posters. We have posters downstairs in the hallway, and that. The other thing that's sort of crazy is if you look at the ticket prices on some of those shows, and then you see Michael Stanley back in the day playing the theater, and the opening act was Billy Joel or whatever, and there's just things like that you look at, and it was a $12 ticket or a $6 ticket. And I, off the top of my head, I don't remember all of them, but there's 15 posters, and almost half of them. obviously the headline act is the big name on the poster, but the support act that's on the poster, everybody would look at and go, "Oh my gosh, that act got huge."
Right.
And so there's a lot of that, and and again, I mean, I've mentioned, Dylan, I think, is a good example, and I said earlier when you asked about one of my favorite shows, I was thinking sort of at the high end level of what the shows are, but the truth is that I've also stood there with almost tears in my eyes and watched 80 high school kids perform an all-city musical, and the experience that they're having, and watching some of them that are sort of traditional theater-looking kids, but also seeing some kids up there that otherwise would not have been on that stage, and they're standing on that stage, and maybe the day before they loaded in to start the tech, Bob Dylan was standing on that same spot. That's for me, it's that dynamic of the big national things, that the high-profile things that are maybe 20% of our overall programming, combined with the 80% of our programming that is really community-based. And, you can stand there and see, and I'm probably getting a little bit less with age. I've seen more of it, so it maybe impacts me a little bit less, but it's still moving to watch people on stage, whether they're kids or whether they're adults, who wouldn't otherwise be on that stage. And to see in the night stage, to have its 200 capacity, to see 190 or 200 people in a room for a jazz act, that how often do they have that opportunity? And some of them are really good. I mean, some of the local bands, not every local band is great, but some of them are, and really good, but they're local, so it really is kind of an all around experience being there, I think.
Yeah. There also was a sort of a major revamping of the lobby recently, right?
Yeah, we did the lobby during the pandemic, and the main entry arcade. We also added these big murals on the outside of the building, and the big video wall that promptly is getting obscured by the construction fence for Lock 3. So in 2025, we will look forward to everybody being able to see that video wall clearly.
Isn't there a patio that's being constructed?
There's an outdoor deck again. Same thing. It's a great observation point for the construction of Lock 3. But with in 2025, when Lock 3 is fully operating in the summer, we expect to have pre-concert events on that deck, and the video wall, of course, will be in play. We added, including your previous guest, Scott. We added 4 outdoor murals in addition to the video wall. We added our donor wall for the campaign is a glass artist out of Pittsburgh or out of Pennsylvania that did the whole idea there was to make the outside of the building as much of an asset as the inside of the building, because while we are bringing in 150 or 160,000 people every year into the building, there's millions of people that come through downtown Akron that never step foot in our building. So before, they were just looking at this big brick warehouse, and so that was an important part of our work in the last Capitol campaign, was to add the visual art component, the public art component. And we have, like I said, we added 4 murals, but 2 of them are huge. They're the one on the Lock 4 side and the one on the Lock 3 side are the entire building.
Right.
And they're amazing.
Yeah.
As of a couple years ago, when the Capitol campaign was finished. When was it? 2022?
Yeah. I mean, really, 2021. Yeah, I mean, we sort of finished as the pandemic was winding down.
So now we're pretty much on firm ground now, right? I mean, now we could. I mean, from the elephants and the acrobats to here, 40 years later. We still have plenty of fun family events that are on the schedule, and that I think that's the great thing about not including EJ and not including Lock 3, which are separate sort of schedules. We do about 350 events a year at Goodyear Theater and
Night Stage, and the main Civic Theater auditorium. And then I actually didn't mention, but part of this is we opened up a micro venue called Wild Oscars.
Oh, yeah.
The capacity is only 45 people, but we've probably done 20 events down there. And we do one person. Mark Lee Shannon did his. He wrote a book and all that, and about his recovery and the music and all that, and he did a show. I think two or three performances of his music plus reading from the book. And we did that in Wild Oscars. We've got a couple of improv companies that are running down there. We've done one-person theater down there. So anyway, with 350 or so events a year, 360, whatever the number is now, is a lot of events, and it's not all music. It's definitely not all music, but it's something for everybody, and lots of family programming, and certainly plenty of dance. It's that mix. It's like I said earlier, the 20% or so are the big national shows that everybody knows of, and those shows, generally are the ones that generate the most revenue for the building. The other 80% are the community-based shows, and some of them, don't generate as much revenue, but they generate people coming downtown and the use of the building, and certainly the diversity of our programming is driven by that community-based stuff. And we're very, very fortunate, Knight Foundation, GAR Foundation, Akron Community Foundation, Ohio Arts Council, the list goes on and on of folks that, give us money for the purpose of making sure that place is active with this community-based programming. So, I mean, they're not funding us to go do Bob Dylan. I mean, Bob doesn't need the help. But other organizations do need the help, and so that's why the model works for us. And Nick, I know you spent a lot of years on the board, listening to our conversations about how we developed all that. And
a lot of hard work on your part.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of hard work on the board's part. I mean, it was a lot of and I think a lot of trust. I mean, as I was saying, hey, we need to look at this or we need to look at that, and this is what it's going to do, and there really hadn't been done that way before. So, the board had to trust the staff, and the board did, and so there's a lot of things that, and obviously the board. Very supportive relative to our fundraising efforts. So all these things, working together to kind of get where we ended up.
Yeah. I have a question, real nuts and bolts question, but speaking of all the kinds of different shows and concerts and what have you that you guys book, what are the mechanics of that? Bob Dylan comes up, and he's one of my heroes, so I'll focus on him, but it could be anything. How does Bob Dylan play the Civic? Do his people get in touch with you? Do you reach out to them because he's on tour?
That's a great question, man. I was wondering that too.
Yeah. I was just curious. Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Oh yeah.
So
well, no,
it's honestly it is 100%. Show by show, it's always different.
Okay.
Now, the biggest shows, the biggest shows, are really Live Nation and Live Nation and AEG.
Okay.
They're among others, but those are the two major concert promoters nationally, and certainly Live Nation is dominant here.
Right.
That has to do with the history of the Belkin family, and who essentially created or co-created, along with a couple other people, they created the industry.
Okay.
So they have these relationships. So Bob Dylan playing in Akron is a result of the Live Nation through Belkin relationships that have been built since the 60s.
Right.
And when Dylan came and played, Jules visited the building and was talking to his friends that are on Dylan's team.
You mean this recent show?
Yeah. And Jules and Fran, I mean, his wife as well. Of course, Michael, who is actively involved in Live Nation's work, was in the building, So that is at the highest level. It's really not so much the relationships that I have, except for my relationship with Michael Belkin and Live Nation, right? So that's where that comes in. Same thing with the major comedy. It's my relationships with these promoters, not directly with the artists, and that's how that is. That's kind of how that's working at the highest level.
They call you and basically say, what are these? How do these dates look for?
Correct. How are do you have these dates available? And of course, I'm try to be as flexible as I can when they call as far as what dates we have, and trying to do that. And the other thing is that frankly, it's like they come in and we are working everything possibly we can do to make sure that their experience of being in the building, both the artist and the promoter, is a positive one. When we're building up our advertising infrastructure to provide support and advertising for the shows that they're bringing in. We are, when the show is over with, we're giving them the financial settlement, quickly. And we're, not making a lot of mistakes. And it's a smooth day for them. And then we're getting them their money quickly. And, it's an efficiency thing. So we're trying to be the place that they want to be. Right. So that we know that they're going to control where the thing goes. They and the artists are going to decide where the shows are going to play. If they have a bad experience with us, then they might not come back. So we do everything we can to avoid that.
Sure.
Then it kind of just, as you go down the chain, it changes more and more, so that by the time you get to where we're talking about the 80% of the programming that's local, that's almost exclusively me directly contacting somebody or them contacting me directly, and we work out, something that works. So it's that spectrum really of how it works.
Yeah.
And there's a lot. We put a lot of emphasis on providing quality customer service to obviously the patrons, but also the people that make the decisions about where that artist is going to play. I'll just give you a brief example. Our stage floor is painted wood. And so, we have a lot of dance events and other events that use a Marley dance floor, and they tape that down. And every time they rip up that tape, it rips up the paint on the stage. Yeah. So the stage looks like, it looks like some kind of a, Pollock, piece of art. I mean, it's just, there's just stripes and everything. It's crazy. So Straight No Chaser came in, and 2 years ago, and they performed, and they were like, your stage is really ugly. If we're going to come back, that stage has to be painted before we get here.
Right.
So, the next time we did the show, the night before, we had another show in that we had painted the stage, but then we had another show in. They put tape down, they ripped it up, and now there was stripes on the stage. So we were out there, literally, the Straight No Chaser show loaded in at 11 o'clock. At 8 in the morning, our Matt, our tech director, was literally out there with a little roller, putting black paint on the paint, because that's that show sold out. It was and we're obviously hoping we can get it again next year.
Right.
And if they had come in and said your stage is ugly, we're not coming back, then they came back and the stage was still ugly.
Yeah.
Then you can bet they weren't coming back the next year.
Sure. Right.
So so now regardless of the would they have still done it because the money, they sold it out? Would they have really walked away? Maybe. I mean, why would we take that chance? Paint the stage.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So that's really it. It's very much a spectrum, depending on what the show is, as to how it comes to be.
Yeah. I remember a few years ago I went to a Morrissey concert there, and some I never saw before. It was like all these uniformed security guys.
Yeah.
I mean, so different bands have different needs or requirements, or felt like a need for security, huh?
Yeah, slightly different. Yeah, for sure. I don't specifically recall.
It's the only time I ever saw that. It's usually the same.
They were like in uniform, not T-shirt security.
Well, they might have been T-shirt, but they were different. They were professional.
Yeah. Well, we generally will have, for most major shows, we'll have a T-shirt private security that works the room. But you're right. Definitely, different artists will have different levels of, for whatever reason, requirements around security. Some of them are relatively loose, and some of them are, you've got to have 2 or 3 people essentially wherever they are. It can kind of go one way or the other on that.
Nick, the fact that you kept yelling at Morrissey might have something to do with the reason why the security
meets murder
around you.
Exactly. I mean, we've had some. I won't even actually name the artist, but we've had situations where the artist management told us he's going to go out into the audience, and this is what's going to happen. Right? Mm-hmm. People are going to come to him. He's going to he basically let it happen. Don't pull the people away. He wants to do that. And then he went out there and did it. And then while he was out there, he was like, "What's wrong with the security in this place? They're doing a terrible job." So you can imagine that didn't make everybody very happy.
Mixed messaging going on there.
Yeah, I heard so many different, being on the board, I heard so many different positive and negative little things about certain, prima donna kind of performers. I remember one, I'm not going to mention any names, who wouldn't get out of the tour bus unless somebody from the Civic came out and swept the sidewalk.
Yeah. There's been some of that, and for the most part, that's really not
common.
It's not common, but I mean, there's definitely some of that. I mean, they don't come in the building until right before they go on stage, and then they as soon as the show's over, they're going right back to their tour bus. They're not walking around at all. But there's also plenty of stories of a Jerry Seinfeld who walked around the building for a couple of hours, just wandered around the building talking to whoever was there.
Yeah.
And B.B. King, who played with us maybe a year before he died, maybe less, and I ended up sitting on the tour bus with him for an hour.
Oh, wow.
And I kept saying, "Mr. King, I've taken up so much of your time." "Oh, no, you stay for a little while longer." I mean, he just wanted to talk.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and there was maybe four of us that were sitting in there with him, and it was just a crazy experience. You're just sitting there thinking, "Oh my God!" Like, and not that it I wouldn't say I was starstruck by it, but it was just more like I would never actively go try to get on B.B. King's tour bus. I mean, they're there to do their job. I'm there to do mine, and we let everybody do their thing. We don't do that, but occasionally it happens that way. And we definitely have had situations where there's been some nastiness on the part of crew people maybe that are working there, and they're not happy about something, and they're blaming it on their artist. And then when their artist actually walks in the room, their artist is as nice as could possibly be, and there's never they're not, none of the things that the crew is upset about, they're upset about. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on, but that's it's just all part of what we do. It's not anything big.
Well, Nick won't be surprised that I bring this back to Bob Dylan. But the Dylan show was the first show I've gone to where they confiscated phones.
Yeah, the Yonder experience. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I'll bet.
What did you just call that?
Yonder is the company that is used. And I was aware of it. We've never had it happen at the Civic. And if we have it happen again, we'll be able to do some things a little bit better. But a lot of comedy with all the Netflix specials and things like that being filmed. That's where you really see it. Like a Dave Chappelle show, they don't want people filming it because they're doing Netflix stuff and they want to be able to sell it on Netflix. So
they don't want that material to be out there where people can see it. Yeah.
So tell us a little, what is that exactly? Because people haven't experienced.
Yeah, no, basically you walk in and you have to your phone or your watch, no electronics. You put it in a bag and they lock the bag and then you take the bag, but it's locked. You can't open it. It's like at a store where they have to click that thing before you can, the magnetic thing that's on clothes sometimes, like the white little thing. It's like that.
I think these are used in schools, aren't they?
Yeah, which in some ways I think is a great idea. I mean, let the kids focus on schoolwork, right?
Yeah.
Which I'm sure is not a widely held opinion. Here at the other side of the wall, but regardless. So that's what it is, and what really kind of it wasn't so bad. I mean, they brought about 30 people in because you got there's 2,500 people that you have to take their phone and put it in a bag, close it, give it back to them. And then they had a little area that was like, if your phone is ringing inside the bag, like you can see the light or something, then you can go to this little area and they will unlock the phone and let you use your phone literally in a 8x8 little stanchioned off area.
Well, who orchestrates that? The artist or you? I mean,
No. The artists required it, and then Live Nation contracted with Yonder.
Gotcha.
So the thing I'll tell you, it's getting into the sort of nitty-gritty and technical aspects of it. 85-90% of people's tickets are on their phone.
Yeah, right.
So if we can get you in the theater, scan your phone, and get you in the theater, but now you've got to put your phone in a bag.
Yeah.
So where is your seat? Do you remember where your seat is?
Man.
When you get to your seat, and maybe you'd rather have that seat. Oh, I remember that's where my seat was. Now somebody else walks up, and they also remember that's where their seat was. The solution to that was they actually hired like 30 people, and every single person, they would look at the phone and write down, section this, row this, seat this. Yeah. Right? Okay, that's all fine and good. Now you got a piece of paper. It's good. Yeah. Except for one thing. The 30 people got hired that day. How trained are they? Yeah, right, and they're literally they're writing rows and sections that don't exist in the theater. So it was just it was very difficult. Yeah, and there's a way that you can force everybody to have a hard ticket instead of it being on their phone, which is its own issues, because then you have to print all those tickets or they have to be sent to them, whatever those issues are. But we were not able to do that because of when the whole thing came together. So it had to be this handwritten note versus everybody having a hard ticket, which would have solved the problem or at least made it better. So it was definitely an experience that if I had to do it again, we would be better because we learned some things. But it was, it's rock royalty. It's Bob Dylan's in the house, and you're out there messing around with where people's seats are. I mean, it was a difficult night in that way.
Wow. Yeah. Well, rumor has it, there was a lot of speculation about that whole thing with the phones, and the rumor has it that this is Dylan's last tour. Who knows? He's enigmatic to say the least. But if it was his last tour, you could understand why he wouldn't want any of that things coming out. He would want to own anything he could have to put out as a live album, a final live album, whatever.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's a million reasons, and you were there, so he sounded great. Yeah. And I think that the hardcore fans were very pleased. People who wanted to hear "Blowing in the Wind" were probably a little concerned, right? Yeah, right. So, but that's Dylan too. I mean, you got to know that. And and he's been to Akron 3 times since I've been around. And by far, this last one, if it's his farewell tour, he's going out on a high note. Because it was by far stronger than the other performances that I've heard.
I thought so too. Yeah. This is From Akron and Beyond. I am your host, Bob Ethington, with my co-host, Nick Nicholas. And our special guest today is Howard Parr, the executive director of the Akron Civic Theatre. And we're starting to run a little low on time here. Nick, do you have any... you had a lot of experience working on the board with the Civic. So
yeah, we learned a lot. He's the hardest working guy I've ever seen. I mean, the Civic is what it is now because of him and some good staff that he's had developed over the years. And thank you for being here today.
My pleasure. Honestly, my honor to be with you guys, and always happy to talk about the theater. It's been a heck of a run. It's been a heck of a run, and
it just sounds like the potential and promise for the near future and on into the decade or more to come is just really high. I'm very excited about all
the 100th anniversary of the Civic is 2029. So you think about that, and we feel like, oh my God, 2029 is so far away, but it's not. No, it's 5 years from now, and so we are beginning the planning process to work towards that celebration because it's going to be a big one, and. It'll be big for the theater, but also big for Akron.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
Yeah. So it's an icon of our community, and it's been an honor to work with the Civic as well. And and to work with great board members like Nick and great staff people. And, it's really been a heck of a run.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've done well by that job.
Thank
That's
you.
for
Thank
sure.
you so much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. This has been From Akron and Beyond. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next time.